Now I'm squeezing out my first color directly onto the gelatin plate and using a rubber brayer to evenly distribute that paint onto the gelatin plate. I'm gonna lay down my first stencil. Now I noticed that some air bubbles are forming underneath the stencil. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pop those with my finger. Now I'm ready to pull my first print. I peel back the paper, then I remove the stencil from the gelatin plate. I wanna make sure this layer of paint is dry before I move on to the next step. I'm just gonna take a piece of paper and fan the plate until the paint is dry. So I know, very technical, but this method picks up the paint that's around the stencil and allows for a clean second print. It's gonna look so beautiful. It's gonna have this organic, mottled, kind of like grungy texture. Ooh, you see how the blue and the magenta paint creates this beautiful violet color? It's just one of my favorite colors, and I could just stare at this all day. Sometimes you'll get spots of paint left behind on the plate during the pulling process. So whenever this happens, you could either press the paper back down to pick up that paint, or you can leave it as is to really enhance that grungy effect. Alright, so moving right along, I'm ready to use this gorgeous stencil from RubberMoon. This one is called KP's Paper Lantern Stencil. This time I'm switching out my regular acrylics for fluid acrylics. Well, you may be asking, well, what in the world is the difference? Regular acrylics are much thicker, while the fluid acrylics are kind of like a liquid watercolor if you've ever played with those. So that means that their consistency is a little bit runnier than a regular acrylic will be. What I really love about fluid acrylics is that their color is so highly saturated and vibrant. I love them and I use them pretty much on a daily basis. And I use them because I love colors that are intense and bright. To make this stencil design really pop, I'll have to use a lighter color because I've already used darker tones for the background, and I don't want to lose the design or make it clash with whatever's happening in the background. Now, there are a ton of benefits of using fluid acrylics. One, you have much more control over how much paint you put on the sponge. And two, you have the ability to vary the pressure of paint application. So what I mean by that is you'll see that in some areas the white paint is more opaque, and in other areas it's a little bit more light. It has this kind of misty look to it. And the darker areas are the areas that I apply more pressure with the sponge, and the lighter areas are areas where I barely applied pressure at all. Now it's time to determine the paper orientation. One way I like to do this is by rotating the paper on each side to see if it kind of feels right. There's really no, you really don't have to be technical with this. I mean, if it feels right to you, go with it. Just don't overthink it. To finish up this painting, I'm going to take a few of my favorite paint markers. I have one in peach, one in yellow, and one in white, and each one is a different thickness, so this is going to add much more variety to my painting. So as you can see here, I'm not really overthinking my journaling. I like for it to be really dense and illegible, so you know, I'm using it as a kind of like just a texture element. Really, to me, I just like to have fun with my creative hand lettering. I like to scribble in the open areas, and I like to scribble or doodle along the shapes of the design and along the edges of the painting. I'm just adding dots, lines, basically just keep it simple and repeat what's already there. Until next time, bye everyone. Thanks for watching.